If Biden would have debated RFK before he went independent, it probably would have hurt him. Whether you believe that Beyonce's music is good or not, I feel like it is shining a light in bringing the algorithm, the social media algorithms, to promote more black country music artists. What's up, guys? This week's going to be a little different because it's just me. Lexi and I, like I said, probably like a month ago at this point, our schedules are busy and our goal is to post every week. Now, we've failed at it and we're averaging about 2 times a month. So I'm going to start here by saying plan for us posting 2 times a month. And then if we're going to shoot for four times a month, we're going to try to shoot for weekly, but it's looking like bi-weeklies right now. And this is my first time doing a solo podcast. So, I'm going to be talking to myself. So this is really my first time talking to myself on camera other than scripted stuff that I've done. So if it's a little rocky, just hang in there with me because I have some topics written down that I want to go over, and it's going to be all over the place. The reason why this show's called Mixed Realities is because we have a mix of topics we want to cover. This is kind of like a passion project of ours. We've listened to so many different podcasts and shows that are niche now, but the biggest YouTubers, the biggest podcast I feel like in the world are ones that just are authentic to yourself and talk about, things that are actually, matter to the person who's behind the camera or not in front of the camera. For example, like Theo Von, I feel like his best podcast or when he's talking to like random ass people, his last podcast was with a carny, and I felt like that was his best podcast that I've watched in a while from him. Similar with Joe Rogan, or even Call Her Daddy. Like Call Her Daddy, what's her? I mean, her niche is probably women, but college girls, sorority girls, but she talks about everything. So today, I kind of want to just talk about a little bit of everything. And the first topic that really came up to me is RFK in Hawaii. He has gotten ballot access in Hawaii, which is one hurdle that some say one of the bigger hurdles that he'd get into, because there's few states that the Democratic parties are kind of like really kind of suing him, for lack of a better word, to get him off the ballot. Hawaii was one of them. I'll pull up this article from CNN. And when I choose to read from articles, I actually try to choose articles that are kind of like, I would say, on the opposite side, where like CNN, you would probably think they wouldn't really cover something like this, but they actually do. And so I'm trying to show people that Fox and CNN, even though they might be, traditionally people align them, CNN's far left, Fox is far right, they actually have good journalists on both sides. And so this is a CNN article. RFK will appear on Hawaii ballot, third state to include him. Independent presidential candidate RFK will appear on Hawaii's presidential ballot following Friday ruling that blocked an effort by the Hawaii Democrats to disqualify his campaign ballot access petition. Hawaii marks the third state where Kennedy has officially qualified for ballot access. He gained ballot access in Michigan, a key battleground state, earlier this week after qualifying for Utah's ballot earlier this year. I haven't been paying attention to the Trump trials because I really don't think they're really relevant. The only one I think that is relevant is the election fraud one, which that one's, like I've said in the past, is not moving quickly forward, and had that whole corruption with, I forget what her role is, but they had corruption with her with dating the prosecutors, and I'm just not bought into any of that right now. The only one is the election fraud thing, and because the hush money trial, we did that in 2016. We had the whole Stormy Daniel things. I think his name's Michael Cohen. He went to jail for that. And so it's like they're bringing up a past thing that we've kind of already redone. It's like living back in 2016. And so I'm not really paying attention to those. I'm paying attention to what the Democratic Party is doing to independent candidate RFK, because I just find it effed up that they're, even if you don't believe the stuff that they're doing to Trump, or even if you do or don't, then why are they doing this to RFK? The Republicans aren't doing this to RFK. The Republicans aren't trying to sue him in every state he's trying to get ballot access. Like, I don't know. I feel like right now we live in a time where the Democrats have lost their identity of like this, or like even the Obama era. Like, Obama stood for something. after Obama's gone, what does the Democratic Party stand for? The saviors from Trump? Like, I feel like that's the worst thing to stand for. Like, you need to stand for something other than just beating your opponent, because I can't get behind the Democrat Party right now. If the only reason you're voting for the Democrat Party is to beat Trump, I feel like that's not a good reason to vote for someone. Vote third party, then vote for RFK. Like, if you're just voting for the Democrat Party because you're scared to vote for a third party candidate, I feel like this could be an opportunity to shake the system. Even if he doesn't win, even if he gets 30% of the vote, that shows a big sign in politics. And I've said it multiple times in other podcasts. The only way you're going to change in politics, change your politicians, is if they lose. The politicians and Democrats or Republicans, for you to change your party, they need to lose multiple times. And we saw that from the 1960s to the early 90s, where the Democrat parties lost 5 out of 6 presidential elections, and it forced them to change. It forced them to create what's called the New Democrats. And I wrote a whole script on this in this video that I've been trying to do, and so I don't want to go into too much in the details, but the Democratic Party used to be more progressive, and I mean, they kept losing elections. And so how did they start winning elections? Kind of. They started moving more to the right, and that's what they created something called the New Democrats in I think it was like the late 80s. Because what happened was, people don't realize, from after Lyndon B. Johnson, it was like a Republican winning frenzy. You had Nixon. Nixon. Then he gets impeached. Even though people don't realize, Nixon actually had the most votes for a presidential candidate in history, like the most, like he had the most votes versus his opponent. Literally statistically the most favorable president that was ever elected, but he got taken down. Some people think it was the CIA. I'm not going to go into the weeds of that, but then he gets impeached. And then you have Ford. Ford didn't want to run for re-election, and so what happened, he debated Ronald Reagan, which Ronald Reagan did really good in that debate, but still didn't win the primary. So it's kind of like the situation with Biden right now. If Biden would have debated RFK before he went independent, it probably would have hurt him if he did bad. I'm not saying it would have been a good thing if he debated RFK, but he should have, just like Gerald Ford did. And what happened? It showed that Gerald Ford was not the best candidate, and then he lost to Jimmy Carter. And that was the one presidential win that the Democrats had from the late 1960s all the way to the mid 1990s. And then what happened after that? Ronald Reagan wins back-to-back elections, so it was almost like a platform to Ronald Reagan for debating Ford, and he won back-to-back. And then guess what? Then George Bush Sr. wins. And so when you have the Republican Party, imagine if in 2016, if Hillary Clinton won, it would have been, Obama, then Clinton, and it would have been the same situation. And then the Republican Party would have had to change, but they didn't. They won. Donald Trump won. So the change was Donald Trump. But the reason why I'm saying this is because I feel like the Democrat Party is the party that used to be for independence, but it seems like they're changing to be just very, very bureaucratic. And I really hope AOC and like that wing of the Democratic Party kind of makes more moves, because that's kind of the only, I guess, hope I think for the Democratic Party, if they start kind of leaning into the progressive movement again, because people are just kind of fed up with it. I feel like you're just voting for another Republican if you vote for like a corporate Democrat. But despite that, that's why I would say always go into each election with an independent mindset. I would say I'm probably one of the most independent persons you can kind of get. If I could have voted in Obama's first election, I would have probably voted for him. Second one, I may or may not. I don't remember if there was a third party candidate in that. I wouldn't probably have voted for Mitt Romney. So I would have voted for Obama twice. I voted for Trump in 2016. 2020, I was Andrew Yang in Tulsi. And in this election, I'm RFK. The only way I'm going to switch from RFK is if Trump possibly picks Tulsi as his VP. That's the only way I'd probably rethink my vote. But if he picks anyone other than that, I'm 100% RFK. RFK, I feel like, it's so funny. Maybe I'll play the clip right now.
My name is Joe Kennedy.
I'm Carrie Kennedy.
Troy Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy Townsend.
Chris Kennedy. And I'm here to proudly endorse Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. Joe Biden.
Our future is on the ballot in a way in which we haven't seen in generations.
The only way to win this election is for everybody to go out and vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
When I think of modern politicians in our country in this century, I think Joe Biden is the RFK of his generation.
Believes in democracy, believes in human rights, believes in the freedoms.
This is a president who embodies the Kennedy legacy.
Oh my God. Let me just say this.
He believes in the freedom saga.
Do you know how insulting it is to RFK, the real RFK, who was a great man?
And it just is the most cringe-worthy video you can watch because it seems like there's a gun to their head because it's not an actual physical gun, but it's a political gun. RFK, if you look at his political history, he has never been in politics. He's always just been a lawyer who's fought against corporations and won. Fought against corporations for better environments, for better medical treatments. And he's literally the definition of what it means to be a Democrat, I feel like. And while then you have, his family members who have been in politics his whole life, kind of milking the Kennedy name, haven't really done anything for themselves other than like being, those kind of lifers, congressmen and congresswomen. And they round them all up and it's just the most cringy thing because one of them says Biden is the next RFK. Like, let's be honest. If you believe Biden is on the same level as JFK and RFK of the 60s, like in the 50s and 60s, like you are brainwashed, I feel like. Like you cannot, like how can you compare the two? But I don't know. I'm still RFK till I die, and I think this kind of goes into my next point of like I feel like the people need to work on their skill of understanding. Like people need to work on their skill of understanding other people's perspectives, because I hate when people say I can't understand why someone would vote for Biden, or I can't understand why someone would vote for Trump. If you're saying that, you literally don't understand half of America. Like if you don't understand why half of America is voting against the person you're voting for, you don't understand your own country. You don't understand, you're not putting in the time to actually understand people. Like you are just so single-minded. Like this is left and right problems. Like humans are tribal people. And that's the bad thing about politics nowadays. And it's developed not over the past. People think Trump caused all this. No, this has been slowly brewing since the 90s. If you could go back to that, because if you look at, like I mentioned, look at the, hold on, Lexi's calling. Let's call, we got our first caller. Hello. Hey, babe, you're on air. I'm doing my solo podcast right now. First caller in the air. How you doing, Lexi? Okay. That was awkward. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that. I kind of lost my train of thought after I kind of talked to Lexi on the phone. But what I really was just trying to get back to is we need to have a more independent mindset and kind of realize that this whole like kind of division in America has been brewing for some time. And I would say it's kind of started in the 90s and early 2000s. After George Sr.'s election. Because if you look at what happened to his election, or look at the electoral map of his presidential win, he won the state of California. Can you think of like now today, a Republican winning the state of California, it was like it was the biggest landslide. I'll put it on right now too. Like that is people don't think of that now. Like literally, things change quickly, and I think we're in a time where we might be able to see a third-party candidate win, or a complete revamp of both either the Democrat or Republican parties, where they're going to start taking on more independent, perspectives. And I feel like the problem is right now, hate to say it, all the baby boomers, I feel like the baby boomers are kind of the problem. The baby boomers, they hold the highest voting power, or baby boomers and above, the highest voting power, but they're kind of the most out of touch when it comes to how they get their information, because most of them probably listen to Fox, most of them still listen to CNN, and so they are still kind of controlled by that, like, kind of the mainstream media of pinning us against each other. And I feel like over time, as that their voting power slowly diminishes and younger people start voting more, we're going to see a better society. I really believe that, because right now, when I talk to my grandparents, when I talk to people who are older than me, many of them are just don't know of this, like, information. You start talking to them and you start realizing they just never got that piece of the news. They never consumed that piece of the news that would change their complete perspective of things. And RFK said it once. He's like, if you consume MSNBC, CNN, or any of those news outlets, you probably effing hate me. Like, he understands that. And so I feel like if you're voting for anyone, or just try to, like, at least before you vote for someone, try to find them in a sit-down interview where it's like an hour of uncut talking, because even though sometimes these podcasts might not hit with the hardball questions, you kind of start seeing their mannerisms after an hour of sitting down. And so I kind of made a rule for myself that I won't vote for someone that hasn't sat down for like a 30, 45-minute podcast or hour-long uncut video, because you start realizing how they hold themselves, if they're actually just like, they actually are knowledgeable about things, or are they just regurgitating like the same BS answer to things. And you can, when I think it was the 2020 election, Bernie Sanders was running again, he went on Joe Rogan, and he went on for an hour and 15 minutes, and you actually understood, like, oh, I might not agree with most of this stuff this guy says, but he actually cares. Like, he actually knows his stuff. But I feel like if you had Biden on that, like, on an hour, and I don't think he could even sit down for an hour interview about many of these topics. Or I wouldn't even. That's not even, like, let's say Kamala. I don't feel like she could sit down for an hour interview, and like talk about politics without sounding unknowledgeable. And so that's kind of like my rule of thumb, is I'm only going to vote for someone that I at least have heard them speak for an hour of uncut. I'm not talking about a speech where they're sitting up there reading from something. I'm talking about sitting down with someone across from them and at least talking. Because if you know the job of politics, that's what they do mostly. They're sitting in rooms negotiating deals. And so at least with that type of format, you can kind of see, like, okay, that person, this is kind of how they would talk if they're negotiating or talking to someone about politics behind closed doors. And another reason why I wanted to bring up the power of understanding perspectives is because there's this guy, his name was Daryl. I forgot his last name. Hold on. His name was Daryl. Where is it? Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is a musician, a black musician who traveled the country doing in a jazz band. And I think he was doing this in the late 60s and 70s. And in his jazz band, they would stop in these very, very, rural towns. And what ended up happening is they would go to these small towns, kind of like the town I live in right now, and encounter people in the KKK. And by doing so, he realized a lot of these towns don't have black people. And so when he sat down with a lot of these people who were in the KKK, it was quite literally their first time talking to a black person, which that started snowballing. And till this day, he has converted 200 KKK members converted them from leaving the KKK because they sat down and talked to him. And one of the biggest things he says he found is that they simply just don't understand. They simply don't know any better. They don't have the information. They live in these small, secluded, small rural towns in the middle of nowhere where they maybe never met a black person, never met someone, a minority. And they've been fed these lies. And then when they talk to he realized one thing he said is like, I've never talked to a black person before, and I didn't understand like you guys could play music, like literally stuff like that. And because he plays really good music, I think he plays the saxophone, and he's like, I never thought, someone like you could play the instrument that well. And so it kind of just shows light that there are still people who are so uninformed. And I'm not saying misinformed, I'm just saying uninformed, because they live in small, like I said, small tribes, whether you're on the left or right. If you live in LA and you live in, Hollywood, I would say that's a small tribe of very secluded people who are on the far left. And that's why their views are completely different than, the corporate Democrats. And so if we would just take the time to understand people that have different perspective than us, I feel like that would solve a lot of the problems. Like, I might not have the same views as you, but if I at least understand where you're coming from, it's not going to be a hostile conversation. It's going to be a positive conversation, and then we could at least meet in the middle of something. Because right now, left and right, it's like Trump's in power, they're only going to pass things with 100% of Republican vote, or the Democrats are only going to pass things because they have the 100% of the Democrat vote. The best kind of the best political movements, the laws have always been compromises. And if you look at the civil rights movement, the Democrats take a lot of credit for passing laws to help minorities in this country. But if you look at actually the laws that were passed, the bills that were signed, it was bipartisan. It just so happened that it was a Democrat president. It was JFK and LBJ. But I'm not going to get in kind of the racist stuff that LBJ says. You can kind of just look it up. Just look up the things. He passed a lot of those things just to get the votes. Because he wasn't polling well. But yeah, so that's the one thing I wanted to say. And kind of moving on to the next subject is, we talked about Beyonce's country music. I said that her country music's bad. It's not good country music, but it's pretty good pop music. But I don't know if she did this on purpose. I don't want to put words. I don't put Beyonce and Jay-Z on that like pedestal of like culture movers and people. I don't believe that. I don't know them personally. I've never heard them speak about like trying to push things forward. But what I have noticed is after I listened to those country songs, I have been getting a lot of black country singers now, and some of them are really, really good. And I'm going to give a shout out to one or two of them. One was Renee Roberts. She has this red hair, which she was the one song I listened to, but the best one right now, and I shared him on my story yesterday. I don't know if I could play his song on here, but his name's Shabuzi. I listened to his whole catalog of music, and it is good. And so whether you believe that Beyonce's music is good or not, I feel like it is shining a light and bringing the social media algorithms to promote more black country music artists. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm a fan of good music. And so if it's good music, I'm going to listen to it. And this music was good. I'll let you guys go look him up yourself. His music video for his new song that's going viral right now is coming out, I think, next week. So definitely stay on the lookout for that, because I feel like that's music. Like he's gonna blow up. I feel like, because his song, I genuinely enjoyed that song that he put out. And maybe once the music video drops, we'll do like a breakdown of it or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other things we can cover on this podcast, but besides that, really the only thing I really wanted to get across this podcast is just having an independent mindset and understanding other people's perspectives. I feel like it's a skill that people are losing as politicians of both sides are kind of trying to pin us against each other. Instead, learn about the other's perspective. Think of yourself as, why is someone voting for Trump? Why is someone voting for Biden? And understand that, because there's hundreds of millions of people in this country, and if you don't understand why someone would vote for someone, and you think, oh, they're all deplorables, like, or I hate when politicians say, oh, the people who vote for Trump are, uneducated. Like, you just literally called half of America uneducated. And the whole, like, uneducated thing is kind of BS, because a lot of rich people did not go to college, and that's how they dictate if you're educated or not. And so, I feel like education now, if you go to public schools, it's not like, oh yeah, you graduated high school, great, now you're smart. Oh, great, you went to college, cool, what are you doing with that degree? Are you even doing something in that degree? And I feel like the whole go to college, and be educated, going to college doesn't mean you're educated. Maybe by the books, yes, but actually, like, street smart, understanding like how to make money, you can't. I feel like you have to learn that from experience. And if you skip the whole college route, or even if you drop out of high school and you go straight into working, that's way better than a degree, in my opinion. And I feel like that's why you see a rise in Gen Z of skipping out of college altogether and going to trade schools. And I said it on the last podcast, I feel like schools need to be more career oriented, because I've had so many friends who stacked up student loan debt because they were switching majors and didn't know what they wanted. They started in economics, then they switched to just a basic finance degree, and then they ended up just doing a basic business administration. And so it's like, why can't we have an education system that's more customized to the kid, where they can choose, like, okay, we have, I forgot how many classes I had in high school and college. What, it was like 6 or 7? Maybe there's 3 of those classes are core classes and the rest are electives. I think in high school you only had like 2 electives, and they were very, very minimum what you could pick. It was like, okay, you could pick gym, you can pick art. Like, no, let's make more electives. Maybe make it so schools partner with businesses. Like, if a local school could partner with local businesses and have like maybe kids leave school early so they can go to a business and at least learn and work and understand if they like something, so they don't go to college and take out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of student loans to figure out that they don't like something. And I believe in canceling student loan debt, but I don't believe in canceling it the way that we're doing it now. It's like, literally, we're canceling it without solving the problem. So it's just we cancel all the student loan debt, but we didn't solve any problems. So in another 10, 20 years, we're going to have to do the same exact damn thing. So it's like, why don't we change the system first before canceling the debt? Because a lot of the student loan debt, if you look at it, it only affects 15% of people. The problem with America isn't student loan debt, it's consumer debt, it's credit card debt. And that's why I feel like the Democrat Party is really missing the point of like what the debt that they need to solve. And the student loan debt, yes, I know people who have student loan debt, it's probably suffocating them, but a lot of them are in like a law degree or doctor's degree, which I know that's important, but that's less than 15% of America, when I think it's like 50% of America has some sort of credit card debt. Why aren't we solving that problem where it affects 50% of America instead of 15%? And I feel like that's the problem with both sides. We're focusing on things that just make headlines and that solve small problems instead of actually solving big problems. So, all right, well, that's the end of this podcast. I hope I didn't ramble. I don't know if I'm going to have to edit out some things because I just realized I was really close to the mic, so you could probably hear me breathing. So, all right. Peace. See you guys next time. I'm going to try to be doing these at least once a week. if whether me and Lexi, hop on a podcast or not, I'm going to try to do this once a week because I work from home. She works at a restaurant where she's on her feet all day, so she's super tired after work. Me, I'm on a computer in front of a screen all day, so I really don't have any excuse to just sit down and look at a different screen and look at you guys through a lens. So I'm going to try to do this more often, hopefully get more comfortable at it, because I've never really sat down and just talked to a camera without a script. And so maybe I should start kind of writing monologues and whatnot, but I wanted it to be authentic. I love the news. I love watching breaking points, but I also don't like, scripting my opinions, because I feel like then I'm able to kind of bend the truth instead of give you the truth, because sometimes I feel like when you script stuff out, you kind of glorify what your mind is actually thinking, and it's not your true opinion. It's a more polished opinion. And I feel like there's some type of authenticity in not being polished. So I'll find the happy medium, and maybe Lexi will do one of these solo things by herself. But peace, guys. Thank you for following us, and until next time.